Hello, you're listening to the Trading Through Coronavirus podcast with me, Nigel Barker, brought to you from Business West. It's a big week this week for businesses in the southwest of England. Some see it as being crunch week, as businesses try to access or are being promised access to the money that was outlined by the Chancellor a few weeks ago. There's a range of packages available, as we'll discuss in a minute, but I'm joined now by Richard Bonner, who's the president of the Bristol Chamber of Commerce and also director of Arcadis. Richard, how successful are businesses in the Bristol area actually accessing this money?
Well, I think we've seen through our platform that about 80,000 businesses have approached us to see how we can get access to some of these funds. And there are three primary areas that many of our members and businesses are moving forwards with, whether that's a job retention scheme, whether that's the business loans platform, or whether indeed it's the small business loans, the small business grant funding through the local authorities. And we're seeing that actually the grant funding from local authorities is starting to flow. What's very interesting, however, we spoke to Toby Savage, leader of South Gloucester Council last week. Only half of the eligible businesses have actually applied for the grant funding. So one of the challenges that we really need to work with the local authorities is to get businesses to apply for money that is available to them. I think it's fair to say that the take-up on the business interruption loans has been pretty woeful, pretty paltry. So far across the UK, only about 6,000 applications have been successful in getting money out the door. We don't think that's good enough at the moment. And then, of course, many businesses in Bristol and the wider southwest have absolutely been applying to use the job retention scheme. The first applications for getting the money flowing were being loaded up onto the HMRC platform this morning. Within the first 2 hours, we saw that 70,000 businesses had made their applications. We're just really clear that the government have got to make sure that they've got the right firepower and support into that platform to get the money out of the door very, very quickly. They've talked about doing that within six days. This is a crucial week for many businesses. Many businesses have got their payroll to get out through the door this week. So that money from government to support those people who are on the job retention scheme is absolutely vital.
Now, obviously, a lot of the announcements that were made a few weeks ago, they were welcomed. But how well do you think the kind of route map to accessing that money has been publicised by the various organisations?
Well, I think that the government, to be fair, moved pretty quickly to get many of these schemes up and running. And certainly we know, because we've been doing a lot through Business West and our Trading Through Coronavirus platform, to make sure that businesses have got adequate routes to get an idea of where those support packages are. And the volume has been really clear that the businesses absolutely need that help. The challenge now is for whether it's the banks supporting the business interruption loans, whether it's the local authorities distributing the grants that are available, or indeed, as I was saying, the HMRC platform processing those applications to get the money out the door. Everybody's got to be working, at their very, very hardest to get the funds flowing that are so necessary for many businesses. And so I think the information is genuinely out there if people want to find it. I do wonder whether in some instances business really understand what is available for them. And I know we clearly have been trying to help to make that information more readily available. But I do just wonder whether the government could do more to publicise the various different packages that are available. There is perhaps more work to be done in that regard.
We're hearing stories in some regions that in some councils that they've had less than 50% take up of the grant scheme. What's the blockage there in that communication, do you think?
I think in part, many of those organisations who are eligible just are not used to engaging with local authorities or government related activities to seek some of that funding. So we're probably not quite sure how they go about it, or indeed actually, for their day-to-day pressures around making their businesses survive, it's just very, very difficult to then lift their heads up to get the grants, applications flowing. So I do think that the more we can do to businesses to signpost where that support is available. But for the local authorities, particularly around the grants, who are perhaps more used to receiving money by way of business rates rather than processing payments out to businesses, putting some additional resources in, which we have seen some local authorities do effectively, will help to allow us to reach out to businesses who perhaps need the support, haven't yet made those applications.
Now, with regards to the CBILS scheme, we know that is a bone of contention. A lot of people struggling to get the money, get approved for the business interruption loans on that. What could change, in your opinion, in that particular process to help more money flow?
I think there's two things. I think first and foremost, we've really got to see the government step in, as governments in other countries have done, to 100% underwrite the loans. I think increasingly we realise that the banks, much as they're able to process those loans, are constricted by their current lending criteria. So getting government to back 100% the loans, I think, is probably a great step. We've seen that effectively happen in places like Germany, the US, and one or two other countries, and we've seen funds flowing out much more effectively. I do think, we were chatting to one of our members on Friday, however, that where deep relationships exist between banks and organisations, we need to see perhaps some of that relationship management working much more effectively to support organisations getting money out the door. It feels as though it's a bit of a tick box pro forma approach rather than a relationship based approach. So I do think banks can also just look at the way that they're operating to perhaps help and support their longer term business partners and customers much more effectively.
Do you think after this we might see a return to more of a as you say, a business relationship manager as opposed to a call centre for business banking?
Well, I think, you just look at our, the size and nature of our, our economy, which is a substantial number of SMEs. Often they need that much more personal, hands-on approach. That's not to say it's one size fits all. Many people are now really adept at using online platforms, so it's a bit of a blend of both, I suspect. But just remember that for many businesses, they've banked with the same organisation for many years. And there's if one organisation understands their trading performance, it is their bank.
And just in your experience, obviously businesses dealing with councils, how geared up do you think the councils have been, to actually supporting businesses at this crunch time?
Look, the councils are facing many challenges. They're dealing with their own staff shortages. They're dealing with a real crisis in the social care sector. So we do understand that there's a lot of pressure on local authorities at the moment to maintain services for citizens. But that said, it is vital that the grant money that is flowing through local authorities is processed as quickly as possible. We're very pleased to see that a number of the authorities, most of the authorities in our area across the west of England, have been putting additional resources into helping to process the grants. Many of those authorities had staff working in over the Easter weekend to help to facilitate the processing of money as quickly as possible. And the tide seems to have started to turn to a degree in terms of the volumes coming out the door. So, we are grateful that the authorities have been putting those resources to bear. We would probably, in an ideal world, like to see more of that coming forwards.
And just finally, what would you say to any business that may be a bit scared about this particular week, struggling to get hold of the finance? Where can they turn?
Look, the primary focus at the moment is going to be around cash. So please make sure that you are accessing the funds that are available to you, but also do speak to your lenders as well in terms of you're managing your day-to-day cash positions. And then finally, we know that as the Chamber, we have direct contact through our networks into government. We had some interventions on Thursday that were certainly dealing with major concerns around the end of May date on the job retention scheme. And we did some very hard lobbying through directly into government. So do reach out to us as well. We're able to give examples, and the government are often looking for examples to help to inform some of their policy changes. So we are here to support businesses and our members too.
Richard, thanks for joining us. And just to reiterate that, log on to the Trading Through Coronavirus website, tradingthroughcoronavirus.co.uk, or follow the hashtag Trading Through Coronavirus. If you've got any questions, you can get in touch with us through those means. Thanks very much for joining us, Richard.
Great. Thank you very much, Nigel. Thanks.